Okay, I think most of us are here, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, Sasha, for bringing up the first slide for us. And welcome to our panel and to all of our community members who are joining us tonight. For those of you who have not watched some of our meetings, I'm going to just share some information at the very beginning to let you know what the process has been like. So for Greenwich Public Schools and our return to school planning, we have a task force that is that kind of blue right in the center, which has been looking at their overall planning and just the input from all of our different groups across the district. And that includes Karen Hirsch, who's our Board of Education member. We also have Mary Keller, who is our head of nursing for Greenwich Public Schools, Katie Noble, who is our physician, pediatrician. We also have all of our members of cabinet. When you look around the outer edges, all of those white boxes are different inputs that come from multiple different departments and people all across our district. School scheduling, we include all of our principals and leadership in that. Transportation, food service, facilities, all of these are impacted in one way or another. Special education, and you can continue and go all the way around. The dark blue are really the four main priorities as we're planning to reopen in September. First of all, to maintain health and safety guidelines. That's very, very critical. On the bottom is enhanced focus on social emotional learning. We know that how difficult COVID has been for families, for staff, for our students, and social emotional, not only learning, but just social emotional needs are critical for us as we go into September. High quality programming for all ages. And then also just the analysis of the achievement data to close the gap, accelerate the pathway, maximize gains for all students. How did we do last spring? Do we have gaps or holes in our learning that we are going to want to be able to fill so that we can really continue to move forward? Sorry, Sasha, go ahead. These are some important resources, upcoming dates. First of all, if you haven't looked at the website, we encourage you to do that. When this does go online, these links are live for you. If you want to go to the easy route just to find the pages, all of our return to school plans are on there. We have video resources. If you have little ones, how to wear a mask, how to wash your hands, all the district communications. There's also a very large frequently asked questions document. We had over almost 500 questions that were submitted, and we have consolidated those. We had 2 questions that were similar, but it's 20 plus pages of questions and answers that are very helpful. Some of the upcoming dates, we do have August 7th is to complete the online form for the return to school status. August 27th is our first day for teachers, and our orientation day has been moved back. There was an adjustment to the calendar, so that happens after Labor Day on the 8th, which is a Tuesday. September the 9th is the first day for all students. And one of the questions I've had since we've been talking about the high school schedule looking a little bit different is Greenwich High School will have a modified schedule the first week because all students report on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There would be a group of students who wouldn't be on campus. So they will have a modified first week. All high school students will have an experience on campus. Some of the latest update, we had the privilege to meet with Governor Lamont, several superintendents in Fairfield County this past Monday. He was gracious to meet us in person and really listen to some of the challenges districts are having. And for us, we have really been an advocate for having a hybrid model for the high school, simply because with 2,400 students, 400 staff, it's incredibly difficult in a building that is at capacity to be able to social distance, and cohorting due to the high school schedule, again, is something that is almost impossible. And districts all across Connecticut are saying the same thing. And they seemed as though this week they are working with districts, and we're happy about that. It included the need for flexibility and hybrid models. Now you'll hear some districts talking about hybrid models for elementary and middle. So far, the guidance that I have had is considering for high school, but still not for elementary and middle school. But we will have another update tomorrow from the commissioner, and obviously if we find out more, we will share that with you. I did connect with Commissioner Cardona by email just to make sure that our GHS plan to go hybrid would be acceptable. And late last night, he was able to confirm that. So that was a huge relief to know that at least our hybrid in high school, he would consider in compliance. And we'll share additional details again as we get more. We get updates almost daily. This week we've had 2 or 3 different changes. And so it's very fluid preparing for September. And I think, you know, patience is of the essence. Just knowing that everybody is really watching the COVID from the health standpoint, and the state is trying to really work with school districts and listen to school districts about some of the challenges. Thanks, Sasha. So most of our questions come from really these 4 categories: cleaning facilities, curriculum and learning, health and safety protocol, and remote learning and school schedules. So we try to kind of put those questions in buckets. And tonight we're going to start out with some of the most frequently asked questions for about the first 30 minutes. And then the second portion will be using the chat function down on the bottom where it says Q&A at the bottom of your screen, where we'll get through as many live questions as we can tonight. So go ahead, Sasha. We'll talk more about that when we get there. So what and who will ensure that classrooms, hallways, chairs, tables, doorknobs, and bathrooms be clean and sanitized? Will lids be added to the toilets, paper towels instead of the air dryers? And we have, the building is disinfected every evening with a product that is considered safe and non-toxic, and it's also very proactive in eradicating evidence of the virus. And I mentioned our website. If you have an interest in the actual cleaning products, there's very detailed information on the website about what we're using. It is an electrostatic disinfectant. And again, we believe one of the best in the market. And we started using it right before we went out last March. So our staff is very accustomed to this. It's not something that's new for us now because we were able to practice with it all last spring. Also, hand sanitizing will be at every entry and exit point. All of our classrooms will have hand sanitizer, also have wipes available for those teachers. All of our hand blow dryers have been turned off, and there are no touch paper towel dispensers that are being provided. And a lot of our restrooms already had them, which was fantastic. You pull a towel and then the next towel pops out. And tissue grabs are being installed outside of the restrooms so that the no touch entry is there for students. So you can grab the tissue, you don't have to touch a door handle in order to get in and out of the restroom. We also have 13 temporary custodial positions that are being hired to really assist with vigilant disinfecting throughout the school day, constantly wiping doorknobs down, and just all around the building, doing everything we can to make sure that we are keeping our buildings clean. What is the protection plan protocol with safety measures? Appropriate consideration with PPE for masks, gloves, hand washing schedules throughout the day, plexiglass, acrylic screens for student or faculty desk. So we have ordered adequate masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer. Those items are here. We have screens, clear dividers, which can be used on desks. They're applied where they're needed depending on social distancing and unique spaces. We also have the directional signage that's used on the floor. All 3 of the pictures at the bottom of the slide are ours. On the bottom right, you're looking at some footprints in an elementary, helping children know which way they need to be walking down the hall with the center lines so that they're passing each other on the right side of the hall. What you're looking at in the middle is the product that we utilized this summer for our summer school. And it's a plexiglass divider, and it's helpful if a teacher needs to wear a glove, pass something under to a child, a learning tool, that they can do that. What you're seeing on the left is a plastic divider, a clear divider that could sit on a desk just to give that additional layer of safety, depending on perhaps 2 students who may be facing each other because they want to have a certain activity. So you add the extra layer, and the front is clear and both of the sides are clear, although you can't see the sides, the clear sides on this picture. Will the classroom teacher be responsible for disinfecting part of the classroom between cohorts of students? What about after lunch? So intense cleaning and disinfecting really happens in the evening by the custodial staff. And although chemicals are safe and non-toxic, we really don't want to have teachers and custodians spraying all day long around where our children, our students are sitting, breathing, and learning. Although it is safe, that's really why we have cohorting. And the level of cleaning in between every class could be excessive and cause buildup of the product on desk and other surfaces. So the staff are going to be very cognizant of allergies, obviously. If we have allergy situations, inside a classroom because somebody, a certain particular classroom has to eat inside, then that's where they're working with the nurse to make sure that we have the right safety protocols in place, which is what we always do. So that part will not be new for us. For our youngest students, will they be able to work in centers and groups? You know, what will the classroom look like? Will they need to stay 6 feet apart in their classrooms? So social distancing expectation with a mask is 3 feet or more if we're wearing the mask, which we will be. It's mandated for us. And there will be some centers and groups which can occur with safe practice. And again, on that bottom right, you're looking at a kindergarten room. Now, granted, around Greenwich Public Schools, we have all types of furniture in each building. Some are round, some are rectangular, so may not look exactly like this, but what you're seeing is we're able to social distance kind of in a buddy setup where there are 2 children that are buddied up at a table. So while it is socially distanced, it doesn't feel so isolating, and we're gonna work really hard to make our environment the best that we can, the best learning environment, while upholding all the safety aspects that we need to for the guidelines. If my child's in the ALP program for one area but not all, how would that work? If he's in a cohort with the other ALP teacher, will they be in the homeroom for other subjects? Will ALP be available for remote learning? We've had that question a lot. Yes, ALP will be available for remote learning. This year it will be a little bit different in elementary for a student who qualifies in one area. For instance, a student qualifies in math. They're actually going to stay with that ALP teacher for humanities math, for math and science. It's math and science and ELA. So they will actually be in there with the ALP teacher for all 3 of those. And they'll still be assigned their homeroom. They'll have their electives and their morning meetings. They will leave the grade level cohort to travel to that secondary ALP cohort. And again, this is kind of a super block of time, so you don't have a lot of travel back and forth in the halls from going from class to class during the day. We're trying to minimize that as much as possible. Safety protocols will remain in place regardless of the setting. Mask, social distancing, washing our hands. We're minimizing material sharing, trying to make sure we have additional materials so that students aren't sharing, for instance, markers or sharing scissors or something of that nature. Larger settings such as the media center may be used for instruction. It could even be a cafeteria. It could be the auditorium, depending on the space. But again, this is to provide additional spacing for students and or the instructors. And it's building by building, and each of our administrators are working really hard on this within their building. ALP will be provided again to remote learners, which I've mentioned before. How will teaching children with learning differences be handled? Will these students be going back to school fully? How can accommodations be put in place for hearing impaired students who depend upon lip reading in order to interpret language? So first of all, let me just say that all students with support needs, special education ALP, Section 504, our EL students will receive services. The format may not look exactly as it did pre-pandemic, and that really, again, depends on movement around the building, making sure we're reinforcing that safety aspect. Because the first consideration is safety and following the guidelines from the state. And we're going to work individually with families on those arrangements so that our students with the most unique learning needs get what they need. And, you know, I want to say, you know, thank you to Mary Ford, who had her focus group with our special education families and our PTA reps. And after their first meeting, they wanted to meet again. And then after the second meeting, they wanted to meet again. And today they had their 4th meeting. So we are really trying to get input from those families who are in these situations so that we can modify and adjust what we're doing to have the best learning environment for our children. At the very bottom of the slide, it talks a little bit about the hearing impaired and speech services. We did order a variety of masks this summer that we tried out in summer school. And we do have a mask that has a plastic insert so you can actually see the mouth. So you can see the mouth, and there are some articles that actually say there can be a difference in sound. But again, not because of this mask, but just mask wearing in general. But we also have some of the best FM systems. And those of you who haven't seen them, it's just a clear mask. We already have about 900 of these that are in stock, and we're looking at ordering more just because there's so much interest from all of our teachers, not just for hearing impaired families and children. So what mask wearing procedures, what will it look like? So in the state of Connecticut, it is required that masks be worn while inside school, also while riding the bus. We will be scheduling mask breaks throughout the day, and those opportunities, will be with their teachers. The principals will be scheduling those for the buildings as part of their just daily routine. If students are willfully not adhering to health and safety protocols, and again, this is a question we get a lot, they'll be referred to the school administration just like any other behavior infraction. And from a legal standpoint, we're obligated under the law to enforce the wearing of masks as a health and safety risk. And again, we've had legal guidance on this because every state is different. And again, the state of Connecticut is requiring it. On July 29th, which was yesterday, we did get some additional guidance that preschool could be exempt if necessary. Right now, we are still requiring masks for preschool, and that's just to have the highest safety standard because our preschool is located within a K-5 elementary building. We don't have standalone early childhood building. Students may opt to not wear a mask if they have a note from their doctor. And again, we're gonna have to work with each family on this individually. If it becomes a real challenge, that's where we'll encourage a family to have us look at remote learning so that we can, provide what we need for their child if it becomes a challenge. We will have masks available if students or teachers happen to forget theirs. We are asking families and teachers to use their own mask. And this strategy is helpful for students to recognize, number one, their own mask, really even for teachers, and to mitigate students getting masks mixed up with one another. If we had, for instance, an elementary mask that was green and it said Glenville on it, elementary, and everybody's masks looked the same, the idea that 8-year-olds could get their mask mixed up is highly likely. So we want to avoid that as much as we can. But if a family needs assistance in acquiring a mask for their child, the district can provide a cloth mask for them. But again, we will also have masks just available at the entrances on the buses for those students or for those the staff members that could forget their mask that day. What is the protocol for a positive test in either a student or a teacher? So Mary, I'm going to let you, Keller, let you go ahead and take this one, please.
Sure. And I remembered to unmute. Anyone who, I think the biggest question is, the safety question of what happens when someone is in school or someone tests positive, and how are we going to manage the safety of all the other students and the exposures. So anyone who tests positive, we require a 14-day quarantine. The reason for that being that the incubation period for the coronavirus is 2 days before you usually start, you may start showing symptoms, and they can present as far out as 14 days. The mean is 5 days. Usually symptoms are there by 5 days. So we are trying to keep that window of time free of anybody exposing anyone else. Anyone who tests positive their physician is required by law to notify the State Department of Health. The State Department of Health notifies the local Department of Health. They would notify us at some point, and we would notify families. We have health alerts that go out. If we have a student who is already at school and we suspect may be positive, we would probably notify the local health department as a possibility, just to give them a heads up that we think we are sending this student out to their family physician, to their healthcare provider to be tested, and they should put this person on their radar. They notify us, as I said, of every positive test in the community and do community contact tracing. They call the families every day. They ask the families to take the temperature twice a day. If someone is symptomatic or not symptomatic, they ask the family to have their temperatures taken as well. And one of the things that we are doing to sort of be proactive and prevent this before it gets in the school is to ask every family to daily do a symptom survey. The symptom survey shows a list of the most common symptoms of coronavirus. It asks if you've been asked to quarantine, if you've had any exposure, if you've been to one of the hotspots around the country, to let us know. And if any of those questions are yes, then we would ask you to keep your student home. There is also an area where you would take your student's temperature every morning. If symptoms develop during the day, a student is immediately sent to the nurse's office, isolated, given a mask. The nurse is in full PPE and examines the patient, makes an assessment, calls the parent right away, and asks the parent to get there and bring the child to the doctor, to the healthcare provider to be examined and make the final diagnosis. The parent would wait outside. The nurse would walk the child out. We wouldn't want any more exposure than necessary. In order to return, the student and or staff will need a note from the doctor to come back to school that they've been examined and found negative, or whatever the doctor determines the diagnosis to be. We will not be doing testing at the schools. That's just not possible for the nurses to do. We only do screening. We only do symptom referral. We wouldn't do anything like a diagnosis. The next slide shows a decision tree so that you can make an assessment as to whether you would like to send your child to, well, not whether you would, what the decision is to make to send your child to school. If they have a positive test, obviously they'll be home and be quarantined. They will have daily at-home health monitoring, both by the health department, and we would probably also call and see how they're doing. If with a positive test after a certain amount of time, and this is something that your healthcare provider will go over with you, they may be able to return when they're symptom-free or 10 days after the first onset of symptoms. And on the right is the daily self checklist that we're asking every parent to put on their refrigerator and check daily, and notify the nursing office or the attendance office if any of those things are positive, and please keep your child at home.
Great, thank you, Mary.
Sure.
Next question, are you making appropriate considerations with enforcing social distancing? So we will have multiple points of entry and exit in our buildings to mitigate the number of people that are utilizing specific spaces. And students will be directed to use those doors that are closest to where, for instance, their classes or their first class in secondary. Main offices, nurses' offices, house offices will all have clear dividers. Excuse me, I'm talking a lot tonight. Clear dividers will also be available for related service providers in every building, as well as for staff working with certain students in a one-to-one setting. Modifying the schedule to adapt for social distancing is between 3 to 6 feet. With a mask, we're okay with 3 feet. Additional staff are being added in K-5 to assist with the grouping numbers during the day, and class sizes are being limited. Thanks, Sasha. How is ventilation in the classroom being improved? So each building really must be considered on an individual basis. All of our buildings are different. Some have newer construction, windows that open, some don't have any windows or have window units. And the AC units are all cleaned on a regular basis. All of our filters are changed on a schedule. When we talk about filters, they're usually talking about the MERV rating. That's the minimum efficiency reporting value. In GPS, most of ours are a 9 or a 10. And we did go in and look, are we able to adjust that to a 13 or a 16, which would be a much higher level of filter. However, after consulting and looking at our units across the district, there was concern that the unit's ability to function properly, and what actually happens to the units if we go to too high of a level of a filter, it's a lot like some of our masks that we wear. You'll put on a mask where you just feel like it's lighter, you can actually breathe, it's still safe, but you can breathe through it. And then there are some masks that are very heavy where almost there's no transmission of air. And if we do that with a filter, with our HVAC and our air conditioning units, we run the risk of actually burning the entire unit up because the airflow is not there. So we have evaluated, but we do use 9 and 10 for our GPS systems. The process and procedure for remote learning. And first of all, I might just point out for remote learning, we were calling it distance learning last spring. The state has changed the terminology to be remote learning. So we're trying to utilize that language because you're going to see that in what the governor puts out, what the commissioner puts out. We have put out information to all of our families about the commitment to return to live if you want to come back to school in person or to go to remote school. And those decisions are due by August 7th. And if you don't have any interest in doing remote school and you're going back live, you didn't need to fill it out. So if for some reason somebody is watching tonight and you didn't see an email from us, definitely check your junk mail or reach out to us and let us know if you are wanting to sign up for remote school and for some reason you haven't seen the email. So the same curriculum is taught in either scenario. And if a student is on remote learning and they want to transition in or out, there would be a conversation if they're with a remote teacher. That sending teacher is going to talk to the receiving teacher. For instance, let's say it's a third grade teacher or a third grade remote teacher. It's going to talk to the third grade face-to-face teacher before that student comes back so that we can continue with minimal disruption. There is up to a 2-week notice period to move from remote learning to in-person learning. And one of the questions we get from families is, well, why would it take 2 weeks? It really just depends on the circumstances. If we can make it happen the very next day, we will absolutely do that. But with 9,000 students, we're looking at lots of nuances with the way Connecticut has structured in that a student can be on remote learning for 2 weeks and decide just to come back to school. If we had 10 students that are all in second grade in the same building, we want to make sure we have the spots available and that we actually are able to get them in smoothly, that we have had those conversations from their sending teacher and the receiving teacher. And with our remote learning, we are striving for a balance minimum of 50-50 synchronous and asynchronous. And that really is live teaching. And asynchronous still could be a video of the teacher, which a lot of our families said they really liked last spring when the teacher would do their video teaching because they could watch it several times, not just once. And just to give an example, if you had a 7-minute block of time in let's just say in middle school, the teacher might be actually physically teaching live for 30 minutes, and then the students are in their breakout rooms for the last 10 to 15 minutes actually doing that independent work, which is very much what it looks like in a regular class where the teacher would circulate around answering questions and helping students. And also, if you're in a remote classroom, we will have a focus on that social interaction with other students. They'll have a morning meeting, they'll have read alouds. Those district norm activities will still be there. And we have also compiled a list of digital tools that we're going to be using kind of on a daily basis. And again, this has come back feedback and survey data from staff and families. I know in our younger families, a lot of you gave us great feedback about Seesaw. This was a brand new application for us that emerged as a result of trying to find a way for our younger learners, especially Kaylin too, to have more independence. So that is an application that we have purchased for next year just to be ready for our remote learners. And in elementary school, students may have a different teacher than their in-person school. Secondary students may have a combination. There may be a biology teacher who is a remote teacher because he or she needed an accommodation. Perhaps they had cancer treatment last year, very capable of teaching, but their system is compromised to be back live. So they may have that teacher on Zoom or Google Meets for biology, but then that same student may have an upper level math class where the two teachers that teach that are teaching face-to-face at the high school. So they would actually stream into that class and actually participate that way. Can we take a hybrid approach, and how will schedules work for each level? So we're working on a full plan for return to school for elementary and middle school, the hybrid for the high school. Now, if the status should change of the virus, it could be subject to change. What we have right now is the high school. We've been pushing for a hybrid, and when I say pushing for it, up until this week, it was not considered in compliance with what the state has said that all schools must go back. But again, we are making great strides this week where we believe are going to be very flexible with us about a high school model for a number of reasons, and you'll see a little bit more about that. But We are working to minimize cross-grade groupings, although all students are back in. Our electives are being scheduled very differently to minimize teachers moving across grades, and that's going to be in K through 8 especially. At the elementary level, students cohort by their homeroom, unless there are 4 sections of a grade level, then 2 classes might be a cohort or will be a cohort with a target number of no more than 50 as prescribed by the state reopening guidelines. At the middle school, the cohort will not exceed right around that 100 mark for students. And again, the plan is to cohort by team. At high school, because cohorting is so difficult because of the complex schedules that students have, we're using the hybrid approach because cohorting is just not feasible in a high school. And this is in schools across Connecticut. Most of the high schools are saying the same thing. And go ahead, Sasha. So if we look at what the hybrid approach looks like at the high school, and we're working towards this. If you look down at the bottom, the high school's divided into red group and white group. And this is just an example. Again, everything is being updated as we get more guidance from the state. So students are basically on campus 2 days a week. So if you look at Monday and Tuesday, you'll see red is face-to-face, the FF, and white is actually streaming into the classroom from their home. On Wednesday, we are doing a disinfecting day. Our high school is extremely large. We want to make sure before the next cohort comes in that we really are able to give it a very good disinfecting. So everyone is full remote learning that day from home. On Thursday, the white group is face-to-face and the red group is streaming. And the other thing that I will just add about this schedule that I get a lot of questions, why are we doing Monday, Tuesday, and the Thursday, Friday? And this is partially, again, looking at health guidance and trying to find the schedule that we think works best social emotionally for students, works best academically, and from health-related standpoint. And with COVID, and thanks to Mary Keller for helping me continue to research this over the past few weeks, with COVID, we know that most individuals show their symptoms by the 5th day. So if students are in class on Monday, Tuesday, then everybody is remote learning. They actually have 5 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, before they would be back on campus. So the likelihood that their symptoms are going to show while they're at home is beneficial for us in keeping, again, as safe as possible. And the same happens for Thursday, Friday students. They're at home Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They have a full 5 days where those symptoms could emerge when they're at home and not when they're at school. Will they be playing sports in the fall? This is a huge question from the high school. And tonight, I received literally probably about 5 o'clock some information. There may be something on the news from CIAC that they're working on plans. We do expect more of an update tomorrow. And if fall sports continue, should a student be scheduled for remote learning on the day their team is scheduled to practice, they will absolutely be able to practice after school. I know the high school has had that question quite often. And again, anything announced this week, it's going to be important that people remember it's still subject to change based on what's happening between now and when school starts. And I think, you know, as a clarity, because there's been quite of information, you know, in the paper, we had one workout group of 10, and we had several of them, where one student had a positive case from, you know, attending something outside of the school district, and we actually quarantined that group of 10, but it did not shut down our summer workout program. Actually ended this week, but again, one student has shut down a group of 10 working out, a workout group. But for the most part, CIAC, as they've watched around the country, has felt fairly positive about a lot of what they're seeing happening in the summer. And again, they're going to announce tomorrow, but we'll see where they are once they provide that information. So I'm going to move now to some live Q&A. For those of you that do have a question, at the bottom of the screen where it says Q&A, you can click on that, just provide a question, and we're going to do the best we can to get through quite a few of these questions. At the end of this meeting, we will archive all of these questions. We will make a new Q&A, or we'll add it to the existing, and that's just going to depend on how many questions are repeats in the same, or we have a new section. So I'm going to go ahead and start scrolling through these, and again, they're really no particular order. I'm going to try to do the best I can to get through as much as I can. Sorry, they're coming in so fast, the screen keeps moving. Are cloth masks allowed or only disposable? The cloth mask is actually what the state has required us to wear. If you have the disposable medical mask, that would be acceptable. And those are actually the ones that we will be providing. If a student forgot their mask, it's the medical, the cloth ones. Is it possible to purchase our computer iPad and then get programs installed? I'm not sure if I understand if you want to have your own computer or iPad, you would not have everything that we offer on the district system. So you would actually be operating within your own system. So you would really want to reach out individually and have that conversation so that we know what subject areas you're talking about. Is there a unique software that your student or your child may need? And when I say unique software, it could be a music software that they're using a music that we can't put on a home device, but we can put it on ours. So I would encourage you to reach out individually on something like that. Oh, and somebody said, thank you. Thank you. It's nice to see you. Thank you. And this is, you know, we have some staff really working hard on all of this. We know how stressful this is for families and kids and just trying to get everything ready for September. How many kids are in a kindergarten class? We are trying to keep all of our class sizes 20 or less. Our average is about 18 right now. We're feeling very good about where we are. However, you know, month of August can change and we may have to look again at how we can mitigate if we saw a huge spike in enrollment. But right now we're very pleased with where we are. So to clarify, somebody was asking if a teacher tests positive, do they have to quarantine? You know, would the school close? And I think when Mary kind of went through that decision tree, if it's in a classroom and a teacher was positive, then that class would quarantine and it would depend on who they were also in contact with. And Mary Keller, do you want to just confirm that's correct?
That's correct. It depends on what's considered a close contact. A close contact is less than 6 feet for 15 minutes or more without a mask. So you'd have to look and see the various you know, variables that went into the person's exposure, and then you would decide how many kids in the class or if it was the whole class. Yes.
Thank you. For remote learners, how would they do PE? It will be very similar to what we were doing in the spring. It would just be more live, where our PE department did a lot of video, especially in elementary, but it would be more live again. And of course, it looks a little bit different, obviously, when it's remote, but we will try to emulate as closely as we can the schedule that the students would have in the high school. And somebody's asking a question, why would we not do hybrid for elementary and middle to allow students time to be sick at home and practice remote learning? Again, this has been a state decision. This has not been a local decision. And the state has said that we would be out of compliance if we did any hybrid. And it was only on Monday evening of this week where the governor at a press conference made a statement that we were going to be able to perhaps consider, and it was perhaps, consider hybrid. And as we've gone through the week, we've gained a little bit more clarification. I did get clarification from the commissioner in an email last night that it would be allowable for high school. We're not sure at this point that it will be allowable even for elementary or middle to consider. But I will say it's very different in elementary and middle than it is at high school. In elementary, we have groups that are 20 students with a teacher, and there's very little movement around the room. Around the building, as in cross contact with other students. We're able to mitigate that and have that distance in the classroom for some of the pictures that you saw earlier. And it also at middle school. The middle school principals have done a phenomenal job putting their schedules together. They have 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. The cohorts on 6th grade don't pass at the same time. They're staggered by 4 or 5, 6 minutes so that even just one cohort goes down the hall. They have really worked hard to make sure that they're staying very much a cohort, which is different than what middle school generally looks like. So have remote learning teachers been identified? Are they being trained? We are doing lots of training. We had a lot of sessions offered this summer. The board did modify our calendar at the beginning of the year and add those extra 3 days. And that's to even get more professional development in for remote learning, because using just the audio function that many of our teachers will have to increase their audio, using a webcam will be new. That's not something that we've done. So yes, we're going to continue to do that. We're also learning from our summer school, which has had the 50-50 model, what's working well and what do we need to enhance. So somebody is asking about cross grades and ALP cohorting with 2 elementary teachers. So our ALP program, again, if they qualified in one area, they're actually going to be in for the other. That's where we have had an adjustment actually in staffing to help bring down for a large portion of the day the general ed numbers in a classroom, so a teacher has a little bit more movement. And because they're in the ALP, they're also going to be in a larger environment. Some of the schools that have a lot of ALP students actually have the additional staffing, which is really helping us with that. So it's staffed differently than it would be generally to make sure those numbers are smaller and not large, especially if I look at a building like Riverside, where we generally, because it's one of our larger buildings, we can have 90+ students in the ALP program. And so we really need more than the 1.7 in order to make sure those groupings are small. And so we're doing that. Again, in elementary, we're trying to keep those classes around 20. If we have some that are slightly larger, we're really looking also at square footage. So we have the square footage of every room in every building, cafeteria, gyms, so that we can actually go in, not just physically look at a room, but understand a room that has 900 square feet can hold a few more students than a room that's 700 square feet. And some of our kindergarten rooms are 1,100 square feet. So not all rooms are created equal. And if we need to move a teacher to a different room because they have 2 additional students, we're doing that. And all that work is ongoing right now in our preparation. Security concerns, we will open the doors for arrival, dismissal, multiple entries and exits. And we're gonna have to make sure after those entrants, especially in the morning, that all those doors are locked back down again. And I will say, I talked about this on the staff meeting earlier, there are some contradictory practices as we prepare for COVID, and things that we need to be doing to keep COVID safe are a little bit opposite from what we were doing from just a safety standpoint over the last decade. We may have teachers propping their classroom door open so that students aren't touching doorknobs. We're encouraged to open windows. We're trying to balance between the health and the safety. And again, we have a safety team that will help us do that. And we have a health team. We also involve the Greenwich Police Department to help us with that, when we also have some questions that are more complex just about which way we should go. The teachers in elementary, someone again was asking about the clear mask. In our special education program this summer, we utilized the clear mask for quite a bit of in the summer program. We're looking at trying to continue and order even more so that we can have those available for more teachers that want them, because we have found them to be very helpful. And especially just to be able to see somebody smile, you know, your facial expression is so important, especially from a teacher. So we're working on that right now. So I'm just, some of the questions are repeats. So why can't preschoolers take masks off in the classroom and have them on whenever they are outside? Again, that's kind of the opposite. When they're outside, like literally outside, all of our students will have mask breaks. But when they're inside, they're still, if they don't have a mask on, they're still breathing on one another. So the likelihood that if we didn't have any mask and we did have a student who had been exposed, the likelihood they're exposing other children if they don't have mask on is much higher, even though they're preschoolers, which could again shut a whole building down. So because they're in a K-5 setting. So we're trying to be very cautious about that. We know how challenging it is. And, you know, we did send out, I know, the baby shark video last week, and we want to continue to encourage families to start practicing now, just as a help. So how many GHS students have signed up? It's still a little bit early right now, and I don't actually have those numbers in front of me. I know as of yesterday, which is still pretty quick turnaround, we were at about 100. But we expect that to grow and change, because a lot of families we're waiting just to hear kind of answers to questions and read the Q&A documents. For our middle schools will likely not have a staggered arrival and dismissal. They're actually going to utilize, when we say staggered, time-wise, we know that they're utilizing different entrances and exits and working on traffic patterns, but that's still being refined right now. And they feel like the doors that they utilize to enter are going to help take care of some of that traffic piece. So if there's remote learning, what's the best computer system that somebody should buy? You know, we do provide the iPads for our K-5, and we do have Chromebooks for 6-12. You know, everything that we do, our students can do on a Chromebook. Our platforms run on a Chromebook. Some families choose to have their own computer, and there really isn't, I can't really recommend one computer over another. That would just really very much a personal choice. So on temperature checks, why no temperature checks? I think partly, you know, first of all, a lot of districts kind of, not districts, really statewide, I'm gonna say even nationally. Originally CDC, I believe, had that in their guidelines. Mary, if you shake your head, I think it was originally in CDC guidelines and then they took it out.
Yes, it was originally in the guidelines. It was originally suggested for summer school, but especially with children, the temperature really isn't something that that gives you a lot of, you know, workable feedback. You don't really see, children don't show the same kind of symptoms. So in elementary school, it's not worth it to take the temperatures. The parent should take the temperature before they leave in the morning, just to see if the student is showing any symptoms and any other symptoms, sore throat, malaise, fatigue, but showing, taking it at the door, you know, having all the children gathered at the door, trying to stay 6 feet apart, it wasn't worth what you were going to find in the end.
Yeah, and again, I think too, it kind of goes back to a lot of times what happens with, you know, young people, students, is that if a parent really is not checking at home, or they can still give them Tylenol and send them to school. So just taking their temperature doesn't really always give us the safeguard that we may think that it does. Afters program for elementary school, yes, we will have the afters program. The state did say guidelines were to stay open till 5. Our programs are generally open till 6. We will honor that. We know that afters is essential for our families, so that will still be in place. For remote elementary, expectations for parents. The expectations for parents, I think we're working really hard as a staff to do everything that we can to help the independent aspect of our youngest learners. Mark, do you mind speaking to just maybe Seesaw and a little bit of how we are trying to be more consistent?
Sure. You know, I'm really pleased to report that all 11 elementary schools are going to use as their learning management system Google Classroom. From Google Classroom, all of the other professional development that will take place before school starts with the teachers will be around the digital tools that are embedded within and without Google Classroom. So for example, Seesaw, which was leveraged quite a bit in the spring by our primary teachers, will be available to all, and it will be utilized so that there's a voiceover function for instructions. There's an ability to replay videos that are embedded within the Seesaw platform. So the fact that we have the additional time before the school year begins is really a benefit for us and for our teachers, to provide them with the additional training to be really familiar with the Google Classroom platform as the home base, and then springboard out into the additional digital tools such as Seesaw, Screencastify. We're looking forward to the Google Classroom upgrade, which will include a very important tool called Jamboard, which is an interactive whiteboard. So as the teacher is teaching, they can be writing on the screen and the kids can see the instruction, very similar to the way they would see it on a whiteboard in a classroom.
Great, thank you, Mark. And I just do want to point out, we have 477 questions submitted, so I will not get through all of them tonight for sure, but I'm going as quickly as I can. And just a reminder, we will go back through and consolidate these questions and make sure we get answers for you. Is there a waiting period to transition from in-person learning to distance? We apply the 2 weeks there, but again, it's really more of a safety net for the school system in that we're going to make these transitions as quickly as we can. But let's say we have one distance teacher who is a second grade remote teacher, and we started out with a full class of children, and we all of a sudden have 10 more students that want to opt out. We will have to adjust for that, and we just want to make sure that we have the teacher available and high quality instructors. So again, we're going to make those as quickly as possible. Cohorting by team, what does that mean for middle school? So what we do is we take our group of sixth graders, and I'm just going to use a number. Let's say there are 300 sixth graders for next year. Then those 300 sixth graders are divided up into teams of 100 for each team. 100, 100, 100. And this is always at middle school. We operate in a teaming model. But by cohorting, it means that team is locked down a little bit more in that the specialty teachers who are working with that cohort are consistent for 6 or 9 weeks. And then the electives are going to change after 6 or 9 weeks so that we don't have as many adults also coming into the teaming structure. And they've done a really good job in middle school, but that's what that means for middle school. It's taking the number of students and dividing them into 2 or 3 groups, trying not to go higher than 100. And right now, most of them, I believe, are 80 and 90, the cohorts. After school activities, most of our after school activities when we start the year, definitely K-5 and 6-8, we will not have after school activities. We're trying to really get the school day open, make sure everything is running okay. If we do have after school activities, and even at the high school, we're trying to look at what are some things that we can do virtually that we're advised not to do in person right now. It doesn't mean we're going to stay that way, but again, we're trying to be as slow and thoughtful as we can about entry and balancing that. And it's going to be looking at every single aspect of what we have available and what we can do safely. So family members, will you be on the same color team at the high school? Yes, you're either red or white because we're basing it on the alphabet. The one area where it will be a little bit tricky, and you know, we will obviously communicate with families as it gets closer. If we have blended families with 2 different names or 3 different names, then one's B and one is Z. If you are not placed on the same team, you will have to reach out and let us know. And we're going to try to mitigate that as much as we can, but because it's all pulled electronically, we could have some unique circumstances. So how would distance learning assignment information be shared with families? So last year was very different. This person is asking about multiple platforms, multiple emails. I hope Mr. D'Amico answered some of that for you. We are really trying to consolidate. Now, the one issue we can't solve before September is we will have Schoology and we will have Google Classroom, simply because teachers have so much content built inside those systems in their curriculum that you can't just go and completely take that away. But we are trying to consolidate more of the platforms. So it will look different at elementary, definitely. In middle school, already look different even in the spring. But because so much of it's live, it's either web streaming, you know, where the teacher, you're watching the teacher teach in the classroom, or it's on Google Meets or a Zoom. And I say Google Meets or Zoom, we're planning on Google Meets, but they still have some functionality that they have promised that we're watching over the next week or 2. That needs to be adjusted, and we're waiting on Google to do that. The online presence, distance learning for middle schoolers or high schoolers for that matter, will follow their set schedule. So their online will look very, very much like they're actually in school all day. It's much more regimented. It will definitely look different than it did last spring. And along with that, I would say if we have a family, who's in a difficult situation and needs flexibility because COVID is spiking and they have first responders in their family and they can't help their child during the day, there are things that we can do to help be flexible with those families. But we feel like after all of the feedback, more of our families needed the tight schedule and that we can work with those families who need flexibility. So again, I have people asking about hybrid at middle school. but keep in mind, and I had this question a lot on the Q&A for Eastern Middle School because it's larger. But again, it is, when we look at Eastern, we have cohorted by 6th, 7th, and 8th, and they're not cross mixing in that 6, 7, 8. They are really sticking to their cohorts. They've done a great job with their schedule, and all three, again, middle schools have. But right now, whether or not we could hybrid, even if we wanted to, as of today, I do not believe that we would get that approved. Doesn't mean that we won't if we have a spike in cases, but we are definitely watching that right now to see what they say at the state. Are you considering classes outside? We are considering classes outside from the perspective of, okay, I want to take my student outside, and we're having to sign up for that. But when you think about an elementary, it has to be scheduled, because in the huge chunk and part of the day, you have recess, we have mass breaks where there are already children outside, and you can't have too many children. And again, it will be individuals, a sign up sort of schedule for mass breaks and those opportunities to get outside. And I know some people have asked about flipping halfway through the year. So the red is not always Monday, Tuesday, and vice versa. And again, this is going to be a work in progress all year. And I'm sure, you know, the GHS team is going to really take their time and look at whether or not you flip. Sometimes has to do how many snow days have we had. If the snow days all fell on Monday, Tuesday, then flipping may be a good thing. If they've been spread out so that, you know, they're not all falling on the same time, then perhaps flipping is not the best thing. So just flipping through, some of these are repeating. Is the curriculum same for high school AP and honors classes? Is there a disadvantage to going remote for such specialized courses? So this is a good example where AP and honors are different. They are different courses. And if you, for instance, are an AP student and we don't have a remote teacher who is AP, that's where you're streaming into the classroom. Now, I can't say that streaming is exactly like sitting physically present in a room. It's not as interactive. As far as the instruction, absolutely being able to see the teacher. You're going to have probably a student who's helping the teacher, like just watch the chat function like I'm doing right now as you're typing your questions, because you couldn't have, for instance, 10 students in an AP web stream that are all talking at the same time or asking questions. So they'll be using the chat function, but definitely they will be able to get the content, and it will look different, but that you absolutely could be at home and get the content. Yes, and somebody's asking about sports practice. If it's not your day to be on campus, are you allowed to attend sports practice? And absolutely, unless CIAC gives us some sort of requirement that would limit the group size. Like for summer workout, the group size was 10. Then they may choose to have hybrid workouts with the number of coaches and the number of students, athletes. So again, that'll be driven by CIAC. If they allow a full team to be on site and practicing, then you will be allowed to do that, even if it wasn't your day for on site. And yes, again, I think I answered the 2-week turnaround. It could be 2-week turnaround to go out, and it could be 2-week turnaround to come in. Again, we're going to work as fast as we can to get students placed if they have a change of heart, you know, after the first week or month of school. But we have the 2-week as a safety net just to make sure we can take care of children. For someone who's exposed, they don't feel good and they're sent home. Again, they'll go through the nurse. The nurse will, you know, make sure the family knows to have those symptom checks, encourage them to go to the doctor, perhaps even testing. But again, the nurse will be following up with all of those. Hybrid model for high school. Again, the elementary is in person every day. We don't have the hybrid for elementary or middle. I'm getting that question a lot, so I just don't want to assume that somebody didn't join us late. We have a lot of people on the call tonight. If you opt for full-time remote, will they be streaming Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday? If you go full-time remote and it's high school, it could be a mix. You could have a face-to-face teacher for your 9 o'clock class on Zoom or Meets, and then you could be streaming in because there's not an actual remote teacher that teaches that particular course. So for high school students, it'll be unique. You'll be assigned a teacher, and the teacher will either be via Zoom or Meets, or you'll be streaming in. An early bird program, I know we talked about afters. Yes, the before and afters will still exist for those families who need to access that service. Is there a concern the teachers union will be striking for safety, bring an interruption to face-to-face learning? You know, I can't speak for, you know, the CEA, which is the state level union. I do know that GEA has been very supportive. We meet with them. Matter of fact, I have a meeting Monday. We have their executive committee next Tuesday. And because we have been pushing, especially at the high school, for a hybrid, I think they're very appreciative of that, that our district came out very publicly and said, we need a hybrid for high school. And that's been very, I think, helpful with our union, because they know that we are concerned about safety. So if you did not receive the form and you're wanting to opt your student out, you can actually email either Linda Valentine, you can email Jen Lau. Those are both, and if neither one of those work, email it to me and I'll forward it to the right person. But if you didn't get a form and you're wanting to opt out to remote learning, definitely check your spam folder, because several families did have them go there, and it was sent back out this morning. So if you look at your, it's right around 10 o'clock, as a matter of fact, when it was, would be arriving in your inbox this morning, as we followed up with families that hadn't either responded or opened their email. So how are we splitting a middle school cohort of 100 kids? So the cohorts actually migrate with one another, and they move around together. So your cohort is 100. And just keep in mind, cohort just means that we're doing the very best we can in our school environment to try to keep students during the day from mixing. But however, the cohorts outside of our school, you have church cohorts, sports cohorts, you have all sorts of organizations that students participate in. So it's just, we're one more layer of just safety for a large portion of their day. But we're not totally locking students down where they're never around a teacher, for instance, that might be between two cohorts. We've minimized it as much as possible, and we've done a good job of keeping that 100 students together. But it doesn't mean that, you know, when they're outside of school, obviously, they're going to be in other cohorts. So the date by which full return, it's due on the 7th to get that to us. And again, you know, if a family, if it gets to be the week before school starts and COVID is not, we're not seeing an uptick, or, you know, COVID is spiking, families will be able to change their mind. What we're asking for now is trying to get these decisions, because we need to know how many students we need to plan for and to accommodate for if we have especially high numbers. So in-person band and chorus, we're working through that right now. High school, we still need quite a bit of discussion. Band and chorus to start the year, K-8, we're looking at would be virtual before or after school. And again, that comes from blowing on instruments, which puts a lot of particles in the air. Also chorus, when students are singing, puts a lot of particles in the air. We're gonna start very, very safe at the beginning of the year. Again, it doesn't mean we'll stay that way. You know, it doesn't mean we'll stay that way depending on what happens. So streaming, somebody's just asking about streaming and what that looks like. And we'll try to provide over the next few weeks, you know, some more information even on streaming. So how will that look? And it's not easy. And some, when you look at really streaming, live versus remote, they are totally different. And streaming is you're watching your teacher, you're really watching your teacher teach. And it's not the same level of engagement. They will be able to use the chat function, but what it does do is it keeps the curriculum moving so that we can have a hybrid and the content can continue on, not repeating the same content for one class or for the other class on Thursday, Friday doing the same, which would actually slow down the entire pace of the curriculum and would have some impacts on students. The teachers are not going to be able to watch a screen while they're having a web stream and they're teaching, and also be clicking back and forth with students. So I think it's being really realistic about what it looks like. The quality of instruction in the demos that we've done, the sound quality is good, the video quality is good. So in the 2-week transition from school to remote, it just means you would stay in remote or you would stay in school during that 2-week period. But again, we're going to try not to reinforce that. So I'm going to go for about 3 more minutes. I'm running this over, I know, and I know some people expected this to drop off. But again, we do have about 591, I think it's 591 questions. Just went to 592. So we're going to work to try to get through as many of these as we can to get them back out to you. Okay, student teacher. Okay, if somebody tests positive, they do, the cohort or the classroom actually does go home to quarantine. And again, class sizes for elementary, we're trying to keep those at around 20. It doesn't mean you won't have one that's 23 or 24. The average right now is 18, but if they are a 23 or 24, we're making sure that we've got that 3-foot social distancing in the classroom, like those pictures that we were showing earlier for you. If you have a child who has allergies or asthma, will this be considered in the checklist? Absolutely. And one of the things that they say, and actually the CDC does as well, you're really watching your own child for signs that are different than what you would see on a daily basis. So if you have a child who is allergic to something when it's in bloom, and you know when they wake up in the morning, that's a normal symptom. Certainly you could check with the nurse, you can check with your doctor, but you're really looking for some of those symptoms that are outside of what you would normally see from children. And that's actually, if you look at some of the CDC guidance, it is very helpful, I think, in helping to understand some of that. When kids are outside, will they wear a mask? This is the last question I'm going to take, and that's when the mask breaks occur. And we are going to really work hard at how we're going to social distance on the playground. There are a lot of games that have been invented around the world that we need to really work with, especially young children, on what are the social distancing games that keep children spaced appropriately, but still, being able to have fun and having a mask break, because it is going to be important wearing these all day. So I'm going to stop with that. We're now over 600 questions, and I just want to say thank you so much. And Karen, I'll let you have the last word if you like. I know at one time we had over 900 people. I'm really glad we bumped up from the 500 license tonight. So thank you for everybody that was able to join us. Karen?
Oh, I just wanted to, say on behalf of the board, I know that there are a lot of questions, comments, and concerns that have been shared with us that we have forwarded along to the administration. I know that there are significantly more questions posed this evening. The administration has been fantastic about trying to go through those, and the frequently asked questions document that's been posted and shared with parents is a living document which will be updated as we get more guidance from the state and with additional questions that have been asked. But I do really want to say thank you to all of our parents who have reached out with support, with questions, with comments, and some helpful suggestions. We are all listening, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity to hear from more individuals as we move forward. But please remember, we are trying our best to be as flexible as possible, and there are no guarantees, well, not guarantees, but 100% of the people will not be happy 100% of the time. And, we really do want to make sure that that everybody is happy, healthy, and having the best education possible. So thank you.
Yes, and thank you for all the questions submitted. It just helps us even be that much more thorough in our planning. And it's a very special thanks to the staff. I mean, all the panelists that are on here tonight have literally spent hours as we're preparing for September. So thank you to everybody, and have a wonderful night. Good night.